Hello, everyone. I'm Jen, and welcome to another episode of Monogamish Pod. Now, May may be masturbation month, which should definitely excite some people. You should be masturbating every day in May. Just saying. It sounds like it's good for you. It's good for the youths. But that's not what the episodes this month are about. May is also Mental Health Awareness Month, and I have two amazing episodes coming your way. This week's episode is with Marjani Lane, talking about their journey into polyamory, her personality disorders, and how they affect her polyamorous life. I mean, this conversation kind of goes into other directions as well. We end up talking about what kind of animal she would be based on her personality. She does tell me it's a marine animal. That's all I will tell you. Y'all can guess. And there are also some difficult topics that are covered in this episode. We do have some conversations about military sexual trauma and rape and sexual assault. There's also direct discussion about suicide, but mostly in reference to Robin Williams. We're not talking details of suicidal acts, but we do also discuss intrusive thoughts in relation to suicidal and homicidal ideation related to certain mental illnesses. So those are the top content warnings for this episode. None of these things are discussed in detail, so you're not going to hear any specifics about certain things, but just for people who need that content warning, there it is. There's also a lot of technical difficulties this episode. The internet was interneting, the software was softwaring, technology was just technologying. So there are going to be some audio leveling issues with the episode. If you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a point in time when I am frozen. I don't look horrible in it or anything, but I will be frozen. So now that I've given you the content warnings, told you who we're talking about, what we're going to be talking about, and apologizing for technology things, let's dive into the episode with Marjani Lane. Welcome to Monogamish Pod. I'm Jen, your fabulous host, and today with me I have Marjani Lane, who loves cream pies because they're like yogurt. I mean, that's not what she's here to talk about, but that is something that we happen to discuss just in getting to know each other on this podcast, the things that you learn about others. So y'all know me, so I'm going to let Marjani tell you a little bit about themselves just to kickstart things, and then I'm going to dive deep into their, I don't want to say crevices, that just sounds like creepy and rude now.
Yes. So once again, you guys know me as Marjani Lane, but my name is Ebony. I am a polyamorous queer person that lives in Hawaii. I will be leaving soon, thankfully. I've been creating polyamorous content with a focus and arguably also non-monogamous content with the focus and representation of Black bodies. That's been really important to me for the past 10 years. I've been polyamorous for I guess it's 11 and 10 years now. Marjani Lane, as you guys know, about Instagram. I've been doing it for 2 years now, going on 1.5 years. I really focus on the representation of Black bodies because we're not represented. And I always want to give a touch of that culture, like when it comes to the reels, come to the language, because we've been not allowed at the table for so long. And we're at the table, we're usually expected to fall into place, and I don't think that's appropriate. So I wanted a space where we can see ourselves, see the language, and see how the language relates to us.
Yes, and I have to tell you that I was never big on like non-monogamous social media. So when I started using social media, which is mostly just for this podcast, to be honest, like keeping it like 3,000, you're one of the first accounts that I found and I followed. And I was like, oh shit, they got Black people in this joint. Yes. Because for so long you're taught polyamory is some white people shit. Like only the white people are making money from this or doing this thing and or like having the podcast and all that stuff. So I was definitely trying to find more polyamorous content specifically because I don't know, I also found a lot of like Black people tend to go more non-monogamous space and not as much polyamorous, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, Marjani's got some cool stuff. All right. And that kind of opened my world up because, of course, I did the thing everyone should do, which is that if you find someone you like who's creating content you like, you look at who they're following and see what's happening there. That was like super important to me. So coming into an online space, practicing polyamory, being open about that, it was like, all right, who are the people I like following? Because clearly those people are also cool. And even if they're not for me, I will meet other people who are doing things that I want to know about.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So, what started your journey into non-monogamy? Is it something you've always wanted since you were a child, or is it something you grew into as you started to know more about yourself and relationships?
I feel like sometimes people ask, do I feel like polyamory or non-monogamy, as a general term here, right, is it an identity or something you do? And I'm like a really probably low-key the gatekeeper of like, I think it's an identity. I feel like my polyamory is very akin to my sexuality. And I say that to the fact that when I was in middle school is when I started really understanding sexuality, like for myself, and I felt attracted to men and women on the binary scale. I had not really perceived further into like transness and queerness. I was kind of like confused. If I like both of them, I got to pick one. I got to pick one. Or even going to college, when I started getting more exposed to transness and queer identity, I was like, okay, I like all these people. Okay, if I find someone, no matter who I don't really think about the gender as much. I'm not saying I'm colorblind or gender blind. I'm not saying that at all. But if I like someone and they're attracted to me, I'm okay. I don't care who they are. I don't care what pronouns they use or how they go about it. I don't even care what equipment they have downstairs, if there's any at all. That's not really important to me. So I think that I've always said like maybe a year into college is when I started dabbling into swinging. But I would say my concept, my thought process of like liking more than one person was definitely middle school, early high school. As far as like acting on these things was college when I was 19. And I would start off dabbling in a BDSM fetish and also swinging as a unicorn. That's when I got exposed to polyamory, like after the word, and seeing people come in with 3 people and then they will leave together. And I'm like, oh, they're all together? Like, yeah, like they do that? Like y'all could be together? Like I've seen it, but it's always been like very white, Mormon, hyper focused on that, or people who just don't look like me. Like even my perception of polygyny I didn't even think of polygyny in terms of West Africa. I thought polygyny in terms of, once again, white Mormons. And so it was very much how I would say, exposed, but I felt like I was always there. I just didn't have the language for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. As someone who wanted a husband and wife when she was 6 years old, I totally get that. That just made sense to me. I always knew that I liked boys and girls, and it made sense to have both. Like, ¿por qué no los dos? Like, what's happening? And he's right. I don't speak Spanish, so sorry to offend anyone who does, because I really don't. I didn't pay attention to my Spanish classes in school.
Well, so it's fine.
Yeah, perfect. So of course we have the idea like this is who you are. This is not something you can really separate from any kind of romantic journey that you've had in life, because you've always been formulating in the back of your mind. So would you say your queerness kind of was something you acknowledged like at that point in time? Is that what started the genesis for you, or have you also just kind of always felt? Again, we talked about middle school being like a defining moment, but do you think of any moments prior to that where you were kind of like, maybe?
Towards my queerness or the polyamory?
The queerness.
My queerness was definitely something I felt well before middle school. Once I've gotten older and there's actually a reel I did where there's a queer person speaking and they're doing a poem about like wanting to be a little pirate like a little boy, but also want to be pretty like a boy, and like all these different things. And it definitely is something that I have always felt. My mother, I always say this and people think it's like crazy, and say that my mother did not raise me with gender roles or gender identities. She would say this is my daughter. She whatever, but my mother never was like, you had to play with Barbie dolls. Like I had Barbie dolls, I put on top of trucks and I push them down mud. That was like what I would do. That was a thing. Predominantly most of my friends growing up were boys, but my mom's focus wasn't necessarily my gender, but she was always my child to be an adult, not my daughter to be a wife. Like that's stupid. Like I just find that it was illogical. And so I think even in elementary school it was playful because we're really children, and also I was in an inner city community where a lot of that policing with gender, while it was happening, my mother was like not letting that shit happen with her. That was dead. You cannot come to her and tell her that your daughter is not dressing this way. That is, she will slap the fuck out of you. In middle schools, when I got more exposed to things like gender performance and what that looked like, girls wearing makeup and me not really being in that. Like I was like legit wearing the same identical outfits as my brother. I would see something, like, I want to wear the same thing he's wearing, like G Unit or Tommy Hilfiger. I want to wear the same masculine outfit. So for me, when I saw we were so focused on gender, I was like, wow, I really don't fit into this space. And honestly, why it's okay if there's your jam, but I feel like it was like you have to be in this space. I don't really like this space. It didn't really fit for me. So I will say that my queerness I felt was a little bit earlier than that.
Gotcha. Okay. So we've seen the beginnings. So what was your first polyamorous dynamic like? Because of course you started with swinging, but like when you made that transition into polyamory, what was your first dynamic?
It was absolutely horrible. It was a nightmare. It was disgusting. It was like, probably now that I'm older, I'll probably like slap the dirt off someone's mouth. I should have done it then. Not promoting violence, guys, but I'm just saying that in hindsight, I was a unicorn. And I say unicorn for a reason for this word. Okay, I was a unicorn for a poly triad. To be clear, if I was really doing, there were really polyamorous people trying to do a polyamorous triad, I would not have been a unicorn. I would have been another partner they had, not a unicorn. And they had a lot of rules. A lot of rules. The wife was very like the nightmare wife. You don't want to believe it until it happens. Like the nightmare wife, like you can't do this, you can't. Like one of my funny haha real TikToks. It's like, oh yeah, here's all my rules. Those are rules. I'm saying those rules based upon like legit what was being told to me at one point. Like you can't kiss my husband in the mouth. You can't do. I prefer if you do position.
I'm sorry, y'all. I made a face. For people who are listening who did not see my face, I implore you to go to the YouTube channel and watch my reaction to that. But I will just say that this face, you cannot, you're in a triad, but you cannot kiss my husband on the mouth. You cannot kiss your boyfriend on the mouth.
No.
Because his wife said so?
Yeah. Yeah. And I even questioned it because I was like, I'm like, this time I might be 20, creeping to 20. And this is probably like a back and forth between me. Like, also understand, guys, I was not an ethical person. I was not navigating polyamory consensually in some form or fashion. I, at some point, was cheating on partners I had. So make sure I put that background there. So if you ever go to my new person, like, hey, I remember you were dating so-and-so that time. Yes. That's a true statement. I was cheating. With that said, it was disturbing. I was like, yo, this is why, like, why would you feel like this is appropriate? There was a lot of unevenness, and I felt more like an object for a remedy or something. Even like the connections I would have with the wife, I felt was stress. Also, to be clear, this happened 3 times. I did a close triad 3 times. Third triad, I really 3 times charm. I realized this ain't the new for me, but that was my transition. And I realized for me, especially, that close anything was absolutely out of question, out of pocket. It was not gonna work for me. Would never work for me. And so that's why I like started transitioning out of that space. I think because it was the only thing I knew. And a lot of people who were openly non-monogamous or openly polyamorous in some form of fashion were people in their late 30s or early 40s. And truth be told, nothing against anyone, but a 40-year-old couple had no business dating a 20-year-old girl. I don't care who says, I don't care. They had no business dating me. No one did. I'm sorry. I didn't have a car. Come on now. Like I was in college. Yeah. So I just felt like in some form or fashion, there was some grooming going on, or there was some attempted grooming going on because of the way I think. It's not really easy to groom me. That was something that I realized, and I moved on from there.
I just cannot. Okay, let me say it this way. I do believe that a lot of people who start engaging non-monogamously and polyamorously while single end up in a closed triad or some version of a triad in the early stages. That tends to be like a formative relationship of sorts. And so for me, I can definitely say I ended up in a closed triad at a period of time because I had a girlfriend, she had a boyfriend, then we just kind of decided to just close the V and make it a triangle. And then it turned into a thing where he was dissatisfied with the girlfriend. And so we went on like solo dates, which was not a problem for her. But then I felt uncomfortable because he was confiding a bit too much. It was a bit too kitchen table-y for me, right?
Yeah, not the pillow talk.
It was the pillow talk, bad talking our girlfriend. It was a little weird, but I was already like dissatisfied with my relationship with her anyway. So she and I stopped seeing each other. So we became a V where instead of her being the anchor, it was now him being the anchor. And that turned into a whole different dynamic. But then they broke up and then we had the threesome after everyone had broken up with everyone. And that was messy because they say don't fuck exes for a reason. I was 18. I didn't know better. Okay. I was 18. She was 17. He was 28. So he definitely didn't know better. So
ain't no way.
Listen, a lot of messes. And I freely admit my fuck ups in polyamory because I don't really think you're practicing polyamory until you fucked your whole life up at least once. Okay.
You gotta be like singing, do I have 2 heartbreaks right now? I'll be damned.
Yeah. Yeah. Some shit's going on. So I can definitely speak to that triad being a formative experience moment where this is definitely what I want, but not like this.
Yeah. It would just make this like different. Like get a little different feel for this. Yeah.
So I just have to say I relate a lot to this. And just like you said, 40-year-olds have no business dating 20-year-olds. 28-year-olds have no business dating 18-year-olds. Sorry, we're not in the same. We're not even in the same like age group when you check it on forms. Okay? Like
I can't rent a car by myself. I've ever rented a hotel with myself, a car by myself. Like I can't even get a rent a car. I gotta ask you for help. Like no,
Yeah,
no.
very
Yeah.
wild.
So,
We've all been there, I think. As women, especially, we've all kind of been in that moment. I'm not sure about what men have to deal with because I'm not a man. I'm sorry, I don't know. Sometimes I think about having more men on the podcast, and then I'm like, no, thank you.
I'm always fearful, like having men talk sometimes because you don't know how it's gonna go, and you're like, I really don't want to have to do this right now. Like I know it sounds
Yeah.
terrible to say that. Like I'm like, sometimes I'm like when I come in like a chat or like a little clubhouse chat and people are talking, I'm like, I really don't want this man to talk because I'm really fearful that he's gonna say something, and I gotta come out my bag. I see that, like put old Johnny down.
No, I get it. I get it. So that's your first relationship. So how are you living and loving now? Just so we can see the difference between where you were then and where you are now.
So currently I'm in a relationship with my primary, who is a monogamous person. So it's a mono poly style relationship. My focus right now, which is why I'm irritated, people keep hitting me up. Right now is I'm in a really strong transition stage right now. I'm leaving Hawaii. I am changing. Like I actually feel like this is like a really strong transition as far as like coming out of the military 2 years ago. I'm still unpacking that. I have PTSD from then, so like I'm still trying to unpack what the military whole like the whole mindset is really hard to unpack, and I'm trying to prepare myself for actually like boots on ground, like in my career industry, which is probably going to be the real industry, as well as transition to a new state. There's a lot of things going on right now, so I don't even want to think about anything else other than what I got to do, and obviously my partner too. Usually, as far as like my availability, like what I do, I'm not currently dating. That's just a personal choice. At some point, that may come up, it may not come up. I don't know. Like when I say come up, I may or may not do it within the next 2 or 3 years. It really depends upon my stress levels. I had a double breakup last year. Actually, I'm lying to you. A triple breakup. A triple breakup. I had 4 partners at one time. I broke up with 3. One broke up with me, and I was dating my primary. And so, yeah, I just really don't have the energy right now. I have to really unpack kind of like where I'm at and like what wrong I would guess you say. Because these are serious, these are serious relationships, very long term, somewhere 4.5, 5 years going on. That's where I'm at now, and I'm really happy that the biggest thing for me was transitioning from Bass to now was realizing that my polyamory is my identity, not something I do. So I felt a lot of not animosity, but some type of way to myself about not having multiple partners like I've had for the past 4 or 5 years, like at least 3 partners on hand. And I realized, does that make me polyamorous? Like, does that really make polyamory? Is that what defines polyamory? And is it me actually actively having multiple partners at one time? And so turning it from a verb to an identity for myself. So that kind of has helped me a lot. I really don't want to date anyone else right now. Like I don't really feel like it. I have the ability to. I have more than the capability of doing so, but it's more so I really need to focus on what's going on in my life. I think a big downfall of my polyamory in my past few years was I wasn't able to focus on things I need to get done because I was focusing on my partners, which is not, if that's how you work, that's fine. But for me, because of the way my brain works, I can't. I gotta prioritize certain things first. So I think once I get in a more settled, comfortable position, I may feel more comfortable navigating different spaces. Shoot, I could break up with him right now, and I'd be have to still focus on what I gotta do. You gotta eat, guys. You gotta eat. So that's something that I've been really working on for myself lately, as far as my polyamorous journey.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think the pandemic has brought a lot of breakups, like in a lot of ways. And I was having a conversation with someone about this earlier, how some people are actively just completely doing a personality shift, so to speak. Like the pandemic has happened. They've had some trauma, of course, as a part of the world wild scale trauma that we've had going on right now with this whole COVID situation, which is still
Mhm.
not over. By the way, I have to probably remind people of this. The pandemic is not actually over.
Wear your mask.
So there's that. Um, but also like people are doing a lot of like self-interrogation and kind of figure out what is and what isn't working for them. I think the pandemic caused a lot of circles to tighten, get a little smaller, and require people to genuinely think, wow, is this relationship fulfilling me or not? And as someone who's been broken up with, I'm sure it's devastating to find out, yeah, this is not working. And then as someone doing the breaking up, it's also devastating in a different way. Like, shit, this is not working. And I love this person
Yeah,
so much, but I can't.
yeah.
And we have to have a conversation about polyamorous breakups on the podcast one day because maybe.
Yeah, I do feel like the pandemic definitely brought upon, especially with my focus of like my transition with my career. I saw like I had to break up with one part, actually my ex primary, and it was rooted in my success. Let's be honest. I was a narcissist person with a narcissistic personality disorder. I have my own personality disorder, which is very focused on myself as well, but not narcissist like. And I was not going to bend the knee for my success. I'm never going to do that. If I'm doing great, I'm not going to
Mhm.
stop doing great because you will feel comfortable about it. And so that was something that really had to pop. Like I had never really had to process that. I had heard about other Black women and Black feminists dealing with that from cishet men. And then to have to experience it twice, I did it happen in 2020 and 2021. I was like, oh yeah, I got to filter y'all out more. I got to figure out how to filter this out because I can't have that. I can't have someone feel some way because I make more money than them, or because I'm a influencer in polyamory. I just don't feel comfortable with that. It's not conducive to my life. Like I don't have time for you to be weird about it or feel like that I need to like I don't know drop something to be more palatable for you. I don't know. Is it something that's something I
Mhm.
realized was really big that I realized during the pandemic, which is still going on.
Yeah. Listen, I so many podcasts are out there talking about women are not high value if they make too much money or if they don't need a man and all these things. And I'm like, and a high value woman does this. And I'm just like,
What's gonna happen is I'm gonna have my fucking wine and my beef. I'm actually tonight. I'm gonna have a beef Wellington, okay, and some garlic mashed potatoes with some goat cheese and some mixed vegetables. And if that means I'm a high value woman, I'm too good for men, then so motherfucking be it. I don't care. I am not
that
going to
part.
chicken sandwiches off the street because you want to feel better about your masculinity. That's dead. That's dead. I'll be okay. Rather
I
crying at the vet than on the bus stop. It's okay. Like it's okay. So when I hear that, I that is something I think has blossomed out very disgustingly thanks to the cult of KS. And so it is something I think that would affected my primary partner, and that's okay. Sure, we'll find another one. There's always one.
Yeah, there's always more. Like we always talk about with men, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Yeah, there are lots of other men out there too. You know that, right? There are men who actually don't mind when their partner makes more money than them. There are men who want to be sugar babies to like high value women. Like they'll come knocking on your door.
Mhm. So I'll be okay. Completely fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned you had a personality disorder. Were you able to talk a bit more about that? Your partner, yeah, narcissistic personality is hard to
Yeah.
navigate with.
Yeah.
So,
They're hard to deal with. I think because of I have two personality disorders. I have diagnosed OCPD, which is obsessive compulsive personality disorder, not to be confused with OCD. OCD is more like rituals and stuff like that.
mhm,
OCPD think more like if it's not my way, like the control freak or like the
yeah.
with all the lists and stuff like that is like the OCPD. That definitely is something that was born out of my childhood for sure. ACPD, excuse me, ASPD. ASPD is antisocial personality disorder, which is not as famously known as a sociopath or a psychopath. That one is interesting because of the fact that there's so many statements of that when people hear me say that, unless they really know me personally, they can't really understand how that like works. Like, you don't look like someone who's a sociopath. I'm like, what does that one look like? Like, what does a sociopath look like? Like, I would like to know. I think people think of the heinous like social like the heinous like the guy that goes to a mall and kills people at a mall. That's not a sociopath or person with ASPD unless their diagnosis is different. Typically, if someone has ASPD, is not going to be going to a mall and killing everyone in one shooting. It might be it's closer to someone who's a serial killer. Yes, I can agree with that.
Mhm.
But someone who goes and do something out of like anger because they're sad because someone hurt their feelings, that's a distinctly different thing. That's a distinctly thing. Whatever. ASPD, typically we don't really do good with societal rules or expectations or like laws. We tend to break the law. I'm not gonna say here and say there broke the law before, it's no one's business, but it is what it is. We have a hard time with dealing or being within like society as far as like how society goes. I will argue a lot of mine is rooted in like pleasantries and like expectations. I don't feel like I need to tell you good
Mhm.
morning for why. Like everyone's like, it's easy to know. It gets deep to the point like you can just tell me like, and it sounds bad when I said it. You can tell me that your loved one just passed away. I'm just gonna look at you. If I unmasked, if I wasn't masking, which is masking, if you guys know about masking, different people with different personality disorders or disabilities may mask. And masking is essentially putting on a face to fit in the space that they're in, right? To cover or hide what's going on. My masking is done predominantly as my friend used to call me, the path of least resistance. My masking can be a form of manipulation, and my masking can be a form of just me not having to go to HR that day. Right? I like my job, I like money, so I'd rather not go to HR and lose my job because I told you I don't give a fuck about what happened to your family. Bro. I can't say that. I can't say that. And for me, it's hard to hear that sometimes that's considered a disorder because I don't see it as bad. I just feel like you shouldn't take that deep. Like, why do you care
Mhm.
that I need to care about that? So it is something that is difficult. We're usually said that we have no empathy. That's not true. I have low empathy. A lot of my empathy is learned, as in like I've had to get counseling or deal with therapy to mask empathy. Oh, I'm sorry that your loved one passed away. I may not feel that way, and people may take that as how they would take it. I don't care. I don't care. Like truth be told, most people don't really feel. I don't really believe that most people walk around. Oh yeah, I care. I care. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Okay, I just don't have. I just think it's weird. I believe that true lie. That's a lie. And also, there's days where I just really don't want to be around it. It gets to the point where I actually don't like people. I don't like being around people. I don't like I have isolated myself sometimes at work to where I don't have to be around anyone because the masking is incredibly draining. Like I shouldn't have to tell you anything. I should tell you good morning. I really don't care. Like, but what I will say, having my disorder makes me incredibly great at my job. I am not connected to things that happen. As an air controller and as a train dispatcher supervisor. A train could derail, plane could crash. You will not see me freaking out because I am not attached to anything in that aircraft. I only care about making sure I get this, what I gotta do my next step. That's why you read some books like it's a book I don't know what it's called, but essentially saying that a lot of doctors, lawyers, CEOs have ASPD. They're known or psychopaths or sociopaths, we call them that. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. And yeah, it's a lot. It's just so much. It's a spectrum. I want to say it's a spectrum. Not all of us are out committing crimes openly and then going to prison. It does not look the same for everybody. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thanks so much for explaining that because
Yeah.
I was going to be like, oh, like the dude in like that movie, like Patrick Bateman in that movie. I got it.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
Yeah.
Not all the way. He's a spectrum. He's the end of. I always say this about mental illnesses or mental disorders or anything. Everything's a spectrum. Anyone can do anything within the range of their mental disorder or their mental illness, wherever it's. Everyone can do what he did. I don't care. Anyone can be that person, right? But it also depends what your urge is. Like I like to say that sometimes people with ADHD we hyper focus on some things. So like my hyper focus is comfort. If I don't want to do it, I will go through any means necessary to not do it, even if it means you go home and cry yourself to sleep that night. I don't care. So that is something. That's my focus. So his focus was some other shit. So like
Yeah.
other shit. So you gotta kind of think of that. Also, people with ADHD here tend to because they like hyper focus, they would do whatever they can to not get caught in the hyper focus. That's why I argue like people who go to the mall and kill 1,000 people. Well, not 1,000 people. It's a lot of ridiculous number. Okay, but like the after shooters. Not saying that there's someone who's not ASPD out there. I'm not saying it's not, but it's just not a very strong trend for us.
It's a bit too public. It's a bit too.
It doesn't preserve what you're trying to do. Like if I'm not trying to get caught, why would I go do something that would get me caught?
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
I don't know, and I don't want to make it dark like that, but I'm trying to give you some introspective of what is actually going on in my head. And it's not. That seems more related to me like someone who's narcissist, who's having a narcissistic injury. But like, who am I? I'm not a psychologist. So
yes, I preface. We are not therapists. This is an edutainment. So there's some education, but it is partly entertaining. There's that element to it as well. So we cannot technically diagnose anyone. If anything that Marjani / Ebony said resonated with you, definitely something to talk about with your therapist because we are not the ones.
What I do is move aircraft and move a car. That's the only thing I do. So
I think my driver's license expired, so I'm not even licensed to do that.
Look at this. That actually is a behavior of someone's ASPD. We ignore laws. We do no. This is actually like a generic. I thought about when it took me 3 years to believe these doctors because I was like, no, you fucking lying. But it was things like I don't have registration. I'll keep my registration up to date. I was driving my license for a bit of time because I didn't care because I didn't see the point. That was the point of my fault. There's a lot of other things that I will list out that I will not list out for obvious reasons that I just didn't give a fuck about. And these maybe it's not minor infractions for you guys, but if you get pulled over with no insurance, no license, no registration, no fucking, then you're going to jail, brother. You're going down, buddy. I didn't give a fuck. I just didn't see the point. Like, what was the point of me even caring about that? Why do I care? Now I care because I realize, oh, that's going to impede me from having my before attention tonight. That's literally what my therapist did. My psychologist did. I know it sounds crazy. There's tons of therapy that is available. One, you have to be interested in therapy. My interest in therapy was my focus and how can I continue doing that thing. I cannot, if I get pulled over and go to jail, I can't have a before attention tonight. So I should probably get my license and registration and insurance done. I know that sounds absolutely trivial the way I put it that way, guys, but that's literally how my brain thinks. Why should I follow this rule? unless it's a benefit. So that's pretty much my brain.
Yeah, no, but that sense to me, but I have not been diagnosed with
Yeah.
ASPD. I only have anxiety and depression, apparently. So only those two, not any kind of personality stuff, according to my last therapist. Anyway, we'll see.
I'll tell you.
It's so interesting, like when you really think about some of these things and like certain personality disorders and how they can show up in your life, the kind of motivations you have to do things or not do things, depending on what the case may be. So, how does this affect your dating life? As a polyamorous person, one would think that based on what you've described, if the only way, using your example, was like, hey, if I get pulled over and go to jail, I can't have my beef Wellington. How do you translate that into polyamorous relating? Is it that your partners are a focus in some way, or like preserving that relationship is a focus in some way? This might be like a very vague, large question that I haven't distilled down properly yet, but I don't know if you can pick up a little bit of what I'm putting down.
That's a hard one because of the fact that in some forms of fashion, it will require me to take off a mask. That would not necessarily, I think, would be appropriate for me. And some form of fashion. That's why I say like masking is really deep for people who have ASPD. It can get dark really quickly. I will say that it hasn't, how it affects my dating is people think they can handle it. They think that they understand. They think that they don't. The first thing is they don't believe it because I seem to be pretty much acting like a normal person, which I, for the most part, I'm a normal person. I don't seem to act pretty normal to myself. Like I do things I enjoy going to Starbucks. People who are so sociopaths, I hate using that word too much because it like triggers mine, don't not get coffee. Like we don't like go eat food. We don't like, yeah, we might have a lot of friends, but like we're not like in the basement building bombs. Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's one thing. And then when it flexes, when I flex, that's when people see it. Like it's usually with my partners, I would prefer to not wear my mask. Okay. But when things happen, like disagreements or if they act out of turn, I say out of turn, let me be clear of that. I had an ex-partner that I found out was a sex offender for 2020. I found 2019. I felt like someone in 2019, and then I found 2020. And he flexed. He flexed, and I make a joke about it. But like your personality, you as a person is not going to compete against this personality disorder. You just don't even do that because I will take it there because I'm fully aware. Like I'm not unaware. I'm not going through mania. No, this is me. And he flexed, and I flexed back. And I completely did what I would do. Now, that has a very short range. You can go from, and then people will tell me that's not appropriate, like it's rude, you're being immature, and da da da, freaking out. Like, do you have to put this man's life out there? I don't care. And people say that this is your loved one. Mm-hmm. I didn't say that I had less love for them, but my getting over it is a little better for me. It's a little quicker, a little easier than probably the average person. But it also depends on how I see that person. So it's not hard. It's just people try to challenge it and like they don't believe it. Like they don't understand. Like, yeah, I really want to be able to take my mask off of you, but don't forget that I still have this personality disorder. So don't say stuff and then be surprised I have a disconnection or I'm like reacting. Like sometimes I like a lot of, especially just head men, do things to women or feminine people and they think it's okay. And I'm like, no, bro, like I will knock a spit out your mouth. That is a big thing that ASPD has a very strong correlation of violence. Like that is something that I've had to really unwork with for some time now. And that's why I was saying one time a few weeks ago about there's a thin line, if there is a line, between domestic abuse or violence and personality disorders as far as abusive behavior. So abusive behavior, that's just someone being abusive, but someone has personality disorder. Where is the line met? And that's something that I'm really big deal. I don't think that my personality disorder is an excuse, so to speak, but I'm aware that's the range. So what am I gonna do about it? So that's something that I think has affected me because a lot of times I go straight to 100,000. But I've done a lot of coping mechanisms. Understood it's not always necessary. Dating, I think, actually, for the most part, a lot of people think that I'm just joking. Like they think I'm just like kikiing or something, and then something happens, and they're like, "You didn't react." Oh, I thought you were like, "Why would I react to that?" Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's difficult to talk about these things in this way. So I appreciate all the vulnerability that you're giving in this moment because these are things that I think a lot of people, like you said, they think you're joking or they don't think about in a certain way. And then when it pops up, they're like, oh, wait, maybe this is real.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And what does that feel like? Are there any, well, okay, I'm going to ask a hard question, but you're also free to say no. You left the military a couple of years ago. Do you feel as if your disorder assisted you in being successful in some ways in the military.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I haven't had a really good sit down with a psychologist to break down when they thought it emerged. A lot of the thoughts is coming out of typically ASPD comes out of the childhood. But I didn't display some of the behaviors that people would think children would display for ASPD in childhood. I wasn't like beating kids up. Like I wasn't like doing that type of shit. But in my adulthood, you see it. It's something that is interesting. I feel like it was not like in remission. I think it was always there, but from like the socialization of what women are supposed to do, definitely affected that. As far as getting out of the military, transitioning, of course, I still have traumas. That doesn't go away. That has something to do with my ASPD, but in a sense, like PTSD, all that stuff, depression, anxiety. But it definitely makes me a little less. I'm really good at what I do. I said that. I'm really good at what I do. So if things go left, someone can get, even like when I go apply a job, someone get hit by a train, I would not be the one screaming in the room. I know that that makes I know people freak out because it's something we can visually see on our cameras. I would be like, that's cool, man. Let's keep going. Like it's not, and I'm not desensitized. That's not even. I'm not desensitized. That's something that's. I'm not. I can't feel empathy for something I cannot relate to. I need to get hit by a train. You should have been from a train like that, and that sounds terrible when I say that. But if you guys, even if you know on my page, a lot of things I relate to are things that all things I talk about, things I can actually relate to. I cannot identify with some things. If I don't identify with it, it makes it more difficult for me to create. Even still, I still feel like a oneness of myself. So I think me having my job and sticking to a job like transportation and like those high operation jobs, high risk, high quick, fast, in a hurry, very dangerous. I do very well because I don't have to process the pleasantries. Oh my goodness, what happened? I don't know, bro. This has to do with me.
Gotcha. But that's facts, though. That's really facts. So I get that.
That people really invest themselves, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Just as well as there's good air controllers who are very invested in the well-being of their pilots, and there's people like me who are invested in making sure the plane lands. Same round. Just I just have a different thought process about it. Like
yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's why I was like, it's like to be a difficult question because I don't want you to dive into things that you're not allowed to disclose, like with your service and stuff. I would just generally, do you think that this helps? So yeah, okay, great. And so we've also talked about you having PTSD.
It's PTSD, MST, military sexual trauma.
Okay, gotcha. Having to deal with those sorts of things as well. I'm sure that relating with people can be difficult, having to navigate those things because you can be, I don't like to use the word trigger sometimes, but certain feelings can be activated when things happen in the world. And so I can imagine as a survivor of sexual trauma, not military related, because thankfully they didn't allow locks at the time. And that was unfit. But, there's a lot of things that went to me not going to the military, but those are two things. And so there are some things sometimes, like some ways that people will speak or things that people will do that can create certain reactions in me that I didn't see coming, even over a decade later after the incident. So I imagine that, and by imagining, I know that navigating polyamorously at times can activate certain feelings.
Yes.
That happens. And so has that happened to you recently, in recent times?
I will say not really. I would say recent. I think recently, like the last 3 or 4 months.
We'll say the last year then.
The last year. Yes, the last year then up to like this year. Like last year, my ex-partner, ex-primary, suffered with issues with drug abuse, inclusive of alcohol and cocaine. And he had a flashback. He had PTSD, common PTSD. He had a flashback. In his flashback, he thought I was in Afghanistan with him. Patrol was signed back. We were at his house, and he proceeded to restrain me. Now, this is a very cryptic situation because you have two people who have PTSD freaking the fuck out. Okay, not good. My PTSD is continuing in here, so he thinks because it's New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, the smell of the firework powder, the popping sound. I hadn't known that he was triggered all night. I had no idea, but I should have realized he was drinking more. Why is it was New Year's Eve? I didn't think he was doing that because of the fireworks. No. My man was having a full flashback. Had a full flashback. He thinks we're in fucking Afghanistan. He's restraining me. He's like, "Why are you here? You shouldn't be here." Trying to cover me, like as if we're like in a bunker or something. And that reminds me, that flashes me back to my issues with sexual trauma in the military and being raped. That was a very difficult situation because I realized that my partner was stronger than me. In his mind, we were not in his bedroom. We were in Afghanistan. And the last thing I wanted to do was make it worse, but I also was heavily triggered, like violently. And so that was a really hard spot. That was a hard spot. That actually was what I think is going off our breakup, because I was like, hey, you got to handle that, man. I'm not saying that we're perfect, but I really need you to handle that because I work hard to handle my PTSD. I don't like come up and hit you in the back of the head with a bottle, because like you look like someone. Like I don't do that. So I really prefer if you don't do that, or if you minimize your drinking. That didn't go too well. We broke up like a month later. So it was something that I had to really work on. Like I would say right now, my current partner, I don't feel that way. I think that when we do feel triggered or things are going on, we can communicate it very well. Even if it's really hot, we communicate very well, and we try not to make it happen again because of the sensitivities. Like I have so many layers of things psychologically going on. One thing can spin off another thing, and then like here comes, I would say, the ASPD monster. Like the one that's been like, I'm always like this all the time, but it can go really left if I feel like something's going left. And so like it's really like preferable not to have my PTSD be triggered. I've worked really hard to prevent that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that I don't even know how. So for people who their frame of reference is PTSD through Grey's Anatomy, when Owen attacked Christina and it's either Grey's Anatomy due to, trauma and all those things, like that's a whole different. It's think of that, but Christina also had PTSD. And then they're like, there's just
Like how do you find the time? It really depends on the person who has the most coping mechanism to manage. Because I don't know how to cope with what was going on in my head. I also had to like manage the situation. Like I was the most sober. I was the person that had the most coping mechanisms available to me, the most therapy. So I was really responsible for the situation. As crazy as it sounds, I had to figure out what was best to do the situation without making this man think I'm now a terrorist. I like how did you manage that? And that was something that I was like, the last thing I want to do is have a child by someone who hasn't managed this yet. Nothing against anyone who has PTSD like myself, but I cannot bring a child into this world with someone who's going through flashbacks so often. That's not good.
Yeah, no, and it's because it's not just like about you, it's a safety and security issue as well as we navigate through this process. So that makes sense to me because I feel like that's just a reasonable way of looking at things. And it also plays into a conversation I've had recently about when are you healed enough to engage in relationships to do sorts of things like this. There's this conversation that's being had about healing and who is healed enough and who is not healed enough. And this was spawned by a discussion with Cherie Calico of Black Cultural Diversity Alliance and Black Poly Pride, where there was a post that someone made talking about being able to talk to your ex or being able to talk to your current partners about trauma in your past relationships. And there were a lot of comments where people were just like, oh, if you're still like talking about trauma with an ex, like you need to not be in a relationship. You need to not be with someone. And I was just kind of, or you're just letting someone know where you're at, what's happened. It's not bad mouthing an ex to talk about trauma that happened in a past relationship. There's a difference between communicating effectively with a partner and bad mouthing an ex-partner. And I think that line is somewhere lost somewhere. Like when you're telling me the story, there's some people who I know are going to be like, oh, she bad mouthing her ex on this podcast, talking about his business. I'm like, no, you're just communicating something that happened. That was traumatic for you.
You're welcome to. I don't care. And the thing is like, it's important for me to communicate these things because I don't like repeats. I don't have I had a severe breakdown of all my personality disorders and all mental illnesses one time a few years, more than a few, like 2016. And I realized that the brain is a muscle and it only takes but so much. And I realized I could not take another breakdown like that. That was not going to work for me psychologically. I was going to be in prison. So with that said, I decided that wasn't going to be what I was going to do. So I like to communicate that with my partners. And I want them to try to talk to me about it if they are comfortable. But I know a lot of times people are not comfortable talking with their exes. I like to know because I'm nosy. And I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what, because sometimes if we're talking about stuff, the way they talk about it can also tell you how they feel about it. Because if someone thinks that they were wrong when their ex was beat up on them, I need to know that. I know you need to unpack that. Needs to be unpacked. I need to know that you need to set boundaries for yourself. If you don't really understand what boundaries are, I can hear when you're discussing, you don't know how you're setting your boundaries. You don't need to date me. I am a habitual boundary overstepper because of my ASPD, because of my manipulation. So I need you to set boundaries for yourself. Because if I switch up one day, it's not switching up, guys. More like dropping the mask. And I'm like, Like, I really need you to have those things in place for yourself to protect yourself. If you want to hear that, like, you have to protect yourself from your partner, you should probably protect yourself from anyone. Yeah, people protect themselves from their kids. People have boundaries with their children. You should have
Yeah.
boundaries with your spouses or anyone else. I know people like live in this fantastical world that everyone is perfect and no one ever can be bad to you, which is cute and nice, but it's not logical. It's not. So I think you should have boundaries. If I hear someone that have boundaries or not good at setting boundaries or don't know when something's too much, I am not the person to date. Now, I'm not going to like a fist fight with me. I'm not saying at all, but I need you to know when enough is too much for you. Like when you have enough, like you need to be able to explain that and set that boundary for yourself.
Yeah,
So
no, that's very true. Like being able to manage your own boundaries, I think, is something that everyone should be working on. And like you said, there is a subcontext where it's like to prevent yourself from harm, but also just to stand your own ground in situations. Because sometimes someone crossing a boundary could be something small.
yeah,
But once you give them that permission, once you give them that in, they can continue to do and make bigger steps and bigger steps, line stepping until they get to a point where your boundaries are completely eroded and you're caught out here in a situation you didn't want to be in.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's something that we need to talk about some more. Just throwing that out there for the future. Just for people who are listening, that's something that we need to reference a bit more. Just think about
set
that.
boundaries for yourself, guys. Do it. You deserve it.
You deserve it. Like it's not about someone else, it's about you. You
Yes.
deserve to be able to do
You
this.
set boundaries. Don't let you mess around finding out you doing something you don't want to do. I didn't want to be having my friend unpack their house on Saturday when they knew I had something to do that day. Yeah, because you didn't set no boundaries, bro. Come on.
Yeah. So, do you find that you have like very firm boundaries, that's like generally,
Yes.
just like related to your personality disorders, where it's yeah, these are my boundaries, this is what they are. I'm not going to cross over them. This is what
Yes.
it is.
Yes. Yes. Very
And
aggressive. Bro. Very aggressive. And if I don't stick to a boundary, there's a great chance I'm trying to manipulate somebody. I think people should. If I don't stick to a boundary that I've explicitly said or expressed or communicated, there's a great chance that I'm manipulating you. I know people are like, how's that happen? People use boundaries to manipulate. Some people set boundaries to form something. If you break a boundary of mine and it's actually something really serious to me and I'm still around you, that's not good. I haven't said anything about it. That's not good. I know that about myself. This is me for myself. It's not every person with a personality disorder, but it's just me. So yeah, I do set very strong boundaries. I'm very like about them because they haven't proven me wrong yet. I haven't lost anything by sticking to them. I protect my peace and been able to maintain a pretty healthy mind for the most part.
yeah, no, that sounds amazing. It sounds like you've accomplished a lot of work through learning about yourself and therapy. Shout out to all the therapists out there who are actively helping their clients. Notice I said specifically therapists who are actively helping people. Not some of these bitches be out here not helping nobody. Okay.
So like, how does it make you feel? Like, I need you to give me some coping mechanisms. Like, I need some CBT therapy, man. I need help. Help me, man. I'm paying on this
Yeah.
damn. No, I will give the military their little half 2 cents, I guess. I had some pretty good psychologists. I mean, I don't want to give them that, but psychologists like, yeah, you wrap too tight. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Something good came out of this entire experience. That half a cent really counts to something.
Like, oh, say, here's your list of mental disorders. Oh, those won't go away? No. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, I'll take the whole list. Yeah.
Yeah. At a certain point. So, again, I only have the depression and the anxiety. I guess I'm also very good at masking in some ways when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Because,
Depression mask very freaking well. Probably the masters are masking. Like, the masters are masking, I think.
yeah. So, like, I had one therapist tell me, like, oh, I just think that I don't really think you're like really depressed. I just think that there's something going on. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, thanks so much for telling me that. And I just went on about my day.
Like,
Yeah. This is an accomplishment to me. No one believes you. Yes. But also, no, this is horrifying. People probably should believe you because something could happen.
yeah, masking is when people have these things where they trigger warning when they find out that someone has committed suicide and they didn't know. No, I thought he seemed so fine. He was happy the other day. And I'm like, wow, the masking was a mess. Robin Williams, prime example. Everyone was like, so, oh my God, oh my God. I'm like, masking. It's
Yeah.
what's for dinner, guys.
It's baffling, like when you really think about it. And then I think about how I can bring that into my relationship sometimes and how I can show up in certain ways. And it's also just because a part of me doesn't want to overwhelm my partner sometimes with like how deep and dark the thoughts go and how anxious I really can be. So for people who know me really well, like I said, season 3 is about vulnerability, so I'm being super vulnerable. I don't sleep well. I have not slept well for probably 20 years of my life. I do not sleep well. I'm always waking up in the middle of the night. It's like my body has somehow trained itself to do this, whether it's to go to the bathroom or whatever. I will never just lie there and sleep for hours. That does not happen for more than 3 hours max.
Jesus.
And even so, it took me a long time to realize, bitch, that's your anxiety. It is the anxiety. Your body, your brain is always doing this thing.
I was on.
That's what's going on with you. And people are, oh, you'll be fine, because I don't show up as an anxious person in the world. No one believes I'm anxious. They're just kind of, oh, Jhen is she's just a stickler for the sort of thing. Like, she cares about showing up on time. She's just a punctual person. They don't know that I've literally, like, when I send you a message, I'm going to be 2 minutes late, that I'm literally shaking. I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine. It's only 2 minutes. They'll understand. They'll be okay. Or maybe they won't be okay. Or maybe, and then
like
you just
like
start
catastrophizing until the two worlds end. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, over 2 minutes. And by the way, I'm usually always on time or early. Even if I'm sending you a late message, chances are 99% of the time I'm showing up on time. But that's just too close for comfort for me. If I'm not early, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And-
I arrive when I get there, brother. Okay. Like when you see me, you see I am notoriously late for work. Not notoriously late, I don't say that. I just don't care.
You show up when you're meant to. You show up when you're meant to.
Yeah,
That's how I put it.
But it's a manifest in that manner. I think it's more. I just don't. That's the ASPD kicking more. Like, I don't care enough. But it's a draining. It's incredibly draining. Your brain's always awake. I do have anxiety heavily rooted in my OCPD, because if it's not done a certain way, it's wrong. If it's not done, if you don't make it this way, it's wrong. It's inherently wrong. Like, you're wrong. Like, in that case, like, we can both make cake. The cake looks exactly the same, tastes the same. But if you do your cake different, I will say you're wrong. It's wrong. And I would stay awake at night thinking about that. I would have to stay awake at night thinking about that was wrong. You didn't clear aircraft the way I did, you're wrong. And I have a list on my phone. I have a list. All my content is a list. It's a list. Mm-hmm. It's a fucking list. It's very draining. But masking does show up in your relationships. I think that's one of the things I'm still working on. Is like, I don't want to. One of my partners, he's very transparent with me, and some of the things that go on my head. ASPD, PTSD, depression, anxiety, OCPD, all these things are very dark. They can get very dark. I've had issues with, I know people not want to hear this, but it is something people do in our space to suffer from suicidal and homicidal ideation. That is something that is not easy to describe. People can more easily describe suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation, right? Because of obvious reasons, right? These are things that they exist. They happen. Doesn't mean people are going to act on it. That's why I tell them that it's like a spectrum, right? It's just like invasive thoughts. Like, those things are really big issues, and it's really frustrating when you have the mass that you can't tell your partner how you feel right now. Like, oh yeah, I really want to do that guy right now. Like, you can, but it's a time.
Yeah.
You do this at 4:00 in the morning when they're like hanging out with you. I don't know who wants to hear that when I eat breakfast. Nobody wants to hear that shit.
I probably do. I probably want to hear about the hump. But that's a me specific thing. So I figure you can tell my mask is masked in humor. So when I tell you, fuck, I want to kill that motherfucker. Can you imagine the disrespect? And I can make it funny, but it doesn't mean that I haven't actively thought out how I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's usually at the beginning and the end, and everyone's, oh my god, I have like relax. But it's so taboo. It's so taboo, and then because people have said it and then they've done it, and it's like kind of dark. Like, that goes lovely. I get that, but I think like the lack of communication, the lack of understanding, lack of destigmatizing those thoughts and not necessarily making a lie of them, but like talking it out a little bit. Like, why do you feel that way? Like, why do you think this is logical to do? Like, whatever. Logic is touchy, but it does make it more comfortable. I definitely still don't feel comfortable necessarily bringing up all those thoughts. I'm comfortable talking about them, that they is, not necessarily comfortable bringing them up every time, because I have the disorder that people think does it. So I'd rather not talk about it. I mean, oh, she said this and she's gonna go do it. Like, Jesus, damn, I didn't even do it.
What about your beef Wellington?
That's why I said, like, I want my good I cannot have people sitting in prison. I've seen when they make this little Frito cups. I don't want that chili Frito shit. I don't want that shit. I want to make soup out of a toilet bowl. I don't want that shit. No, that's dead. I think if you get caught for that, it's terrible. It's a terrible experience. I don't want it. I want to fight in prison. I'm tired. I'm old. I don't want to do that. Like, rather not. If you go to prison, there's something wrong with that. I just can't do it. Not for me. Not for this person. Not this one.
So I have a question for you that's off the wall. It's a
Yeah,
question that's been asked me a lot recently, like on surveys for like personality kind of test. If you could describe yourself as an animal, what animal would you say you'd be?
a shark.
Shark. Okay. So you don't bother nobody, just be out here doing the thing,
Yeah,
biting people when they get in your face.
sharks mind their business. They do what they need to do. They let me curious and bite something that wasn't what I wanted it to be. And everyone's like, oh my God, this shark tried to kill 15 people. Like, no, the shark was just hungry. He tried something out. It wasn't work for him. Let's move on. Obviously, I have to be sharks to be taken out by dolphins. So I think that there's people who can really have a friend that's really empathetic. She's one of my closest friends. She's really empathetic, and she has multiple personality disorder. So there's personality she has. It just works. I don't know why it fucking works. And now she reminds me of a dolphin. She reminds me of a dolphin. So like, there's times when I need to limit her. She's like that limiter. She's like the one. She's the only one I can say some things to. And people are like, okay, like yeah, that's not. Don't do that. Everyone else is like, oh my God, what'd you say? Like, you're shark does shark shit. Like
Yeah.
it's the shark shit, and but a shark is like there's more dangerous animals in the ocean, like the killer whale, but whatever.
Listen, its name is a killer whale, but we all watch Free Willy, and somehow we believe those shits are cool. Listen, and I'm also here to let people know dolphins are murderers. Dolphins kill each other for fun. They kill other animals and rape other animals and each other for sport. Dolphins are the closest thing to humans that you will get in the sea world, okay? And this is killer whales also do some similar shit. Orcas do the same fucking shit. Like they're
my fucking business. Trying to get away from
right.
The victim. I'm the victim of the empathetic dolphins.
You are but like seriously, like you are. So I asked my friends this question about me, and my friend's like a black house cat, and I was like, oh, why a house cat? Then I was like, oh, but like outside, that's gross. She's like, you just answered your own fucking question, bitch. Outside is gross. That's why. Living if I could live that life of leisure that a black house cat does, I'd be blissed the fuck out. I get to do whatever I want. They feed me when I'm hungry. They bathe me when I want to be bathed. This sounds perfect.
House cats have the life. I ain't gonna lie.
I did say I also felt like the dragon from Shrek though, so that was also like another thing. So I'm just in my den with my horde, and when you bother me, then I try to eat you. But otherwise, I'm just by myself.
I think about like cartoon characters. I think that like I remind myself of like it is a terrible comparison. Oh, it's so terrible within reason. There's some things I don't identify with, like BoJack Horseman. I like him because BoJack Horseman is real. Like I was like, I've been there, BoJack. I've been on that binge, buddy. Like I've been there. So I think but I definitely shark, and then possibly give or take some form of BoJack Horseman, some form, and the character from Midnight Gospel. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. Okay. That tracks. That makes sense. So I guess now we're getting a little loose. We've gotten deep a little bit. We're getting there with each other and with all the listeners and watchers out there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Look at how beautiful we look. You're welcome. You're talking about this transition. You're in this period in your life. You're getting out of Hawaii. You're out of the military. You're in this space. You're not trying to really date right now. And if it happens, I guess it just happens. Like people just say never, because then someone will fucking come along and try to prove you wrong just because. Yeah. So we're out here trying to do things. So how is this transition going for you? Like you're actively in this space of transition. How is that showing up for you, like polyamorously? Well, aside from your relationships ending, do you think there's anything happening right now that will affect future polyamorous relationships?
Yes and no. I don't know. I think it will affect how I want you in my space. My space is more expensive now, not necessarily in terms of fighting, but in terms of like quality of person. I think I was finding people that I really enjoyed, which is nothing wrong with that. I'm okay with that. But I realized that I am heavily rooted and investment based. And that might be a byproduct of my ASPD and finding worth in people. It might be how I perceive people, which is, if you hear my partner background speaking French, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Listen, we're all at home. Somehow I am not in Hawaii right now because I'm not allowed to go because Hawaii can't take any more people. I know. I listen to Native Hawaiians, okay? I listen to them. They tell me don't fucking come. I'm not gonna go. I've wanted to go to Hawaii since I was a fucking kid.
I'm gonna leave. I feel bad. No, I was. It's not funny. It's not funny.
But it is also funny. Like, also kind of funny.
Every time I think about how loud he talks and his language, I'm like, why do people from different countries talk so loud to their friends on phone? It's so like, hi man, how you doing? I'm like, speakerphone. You don't have to yell at the bed. Anyways, neither here nor there. Yeah, I do think that it's going to be one of those things where I feel like there's a form of investment in my space. I have seen that there's people who I did not find useful. And that is really rooted in my ASPD. I'm not gonna sit here and it's not the form of classism, it's not a form of like me objectifying you. If there's no use, why are you here? That's literally how I interact. This is literally the root of my ASPD. Is if you don't have use, why are you present? My ex-husband's ASPD was everyone is useful, which is very manipulative, right? So that's really like me. You don't have use, why are you present? And I realized that I was in some form of fashion trying to feel like I can stretch myself out like that. It was not logical. It was terrible. So I think in the future, what I'm doing now, especially with transition, I'm investing so much in myself. I'm investing in my career. I'm, going to places. I don't want to be the only Negro moving trains in the backwoods of Texas, but I'll do it for 100K. Okay, so like like no, because
How do I get certified? Because I need to do that too.
exactly. It's not that easy. It's not that hard actually. It's not that hard. It's actually easier to answer children. But how you doing, Bob? How you doing today? That's great. That's great. Yeah, I heard your wife bought some cake. Thank you, man. Thank you. I will be back there getting my motherfucking check. But I realized because of all the things I've done, I've invested in myself so much. I have put so much time. I was 2.5 years was rooted in my mental health in the past 10 years. I literally spent 2.5 years focused on my mental health because I knew that I was a liability. If you have not done that with yourself, I understand it's a privilege for some people. I'm not going to argue that. But I am not going to put myself in a position where to be around. So I think, if anything, it's going to be more difficult. All right. I also understand that I understand my position. I understand that I have Marjani Lane. I understand that people have some expectations of me, and that I also know people they will attach themselves to me just because of my account and my position in the community. And that is something that I have to accept, whether I want to or not. And so I would have to be even more careful about who I bring around me, who I want to date, because I don't want that person to try to get close to me, to expose me. I don't like that. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. I just don't want that. So I think in the transition stage, especially because it's so uncomfortable for me, I do not like the idea of making less money. I do not like the idea of having to accommodate my lifestyle. I don't like the idea of moving to a state that has anti-trans laws. What the fuck? Like anti-abortion laws, anti-trans laws. Like that means if I get pregnant, I have to have the motherfucking child. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
So let's talk being Marjani Lane, like that online persona that you have created, which has like thousands of followers, affiliated with tons of people. I mean, from an outside looking in, of course, there's a part of us that always think that influencers aren't real people. So thank you so much for being a real person here and not just some bot on the internet. So let's talk about building that presence. What drove you to build that online presence as Marjani Lane?
So Marjani Lane is deeper than Marjani Lane online. Marjani Lane is something that was born out of a spiritual headspace that I created for myself just under a decade ago. I will one day, when I'm in a position of privilege to talk about that headspace, maybe you've heard me dabble about it in the group before about what I used to do. And when I come out about it verbally, I will one day, but that time is not now. So that headspace was created from that. Marjani Lane is really rooted in like Swahili for coral. And I like coral because it's like a very fragile but very sharp. It's very sharp. It's very has a very distinct color about it. The environment around it affects it. It can create a home for things. It's just very interesting. I like coral. Marjani Lane is like very important to me. Like I said, it's deeper than polyamory. It's much deeper than polyamory. It's like a spiritual journey for me. And I created Marjani Lane out of a position of need to identify with my queerness and my femininity that was not afforded to me, especially with the Africanness. That's not, it exists, but I hadn't seen it until now with more education and access. I didn't know that there was African queer Parisha. I didn't know that there was African queer like voodoo, like deities. I didn't know that was a fucking thing. I didn't know. And so now that I'm here, I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted. And so Marjani Lane kind of was born out of a safe space for me. Creating it for polyamory, non-monogamy was even more spiritual journey because I felt like opening myself up, especially as someone who had dealt with so much trauma and someone who has these personality disorders, who has these positions where I feel like maybe I'm not in a position to ever love because people told me that we can't love. I've been told so many times that people with sociopaths can't love, and that's wild to me. Yeah, there's a spectrum. Some of us are a little more difficult to find that headspace, but it's not like I can't love. That's wild. It's crazy. So I made it out of originally Marjani Lane, even on Facebook, you couldn't see my face. You only saw like from like here down. And I did it on purpose because I was in the military. I was married in the military, and my prior partner was someone who was a higher rank than me, a much higher rank than me in the military. should not have been dating this person. And I had to protect my identity. But also it played into the idea of just me being anonymous. When I made it on the Instagram, it definitely was something I had to do because I was tired of seeing so many accounts focused on polyamory, non-monogamy that was only focused on white people. And then if it was a black person, we were the token, which is like my worst nightmare in the world. And I wanted to hear something. I was tired looking at that. I was tired. Like I was like, hey, who wants to see that every day? Like you talk about polyamory and every account, this is a white person. And I'm not white. So I can't identify with some of the ins and outs of that space. And that was even more like an extension of Marjani Lane's love, like that polyamorous, like want to love and be able to love multiple people, even if it's not necessarily the way you want to be loved. I can show that I feel like I'm loving you. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just loving you. So my content is to me an extension of, even though I have my own things, it's essentially my love. I can't love everybody, I know, but it's essentially my love, like my love of polyamory, my love of Africanness, my love of diaspora, my love to make sure we have a place at the table. And if that means that I gotta kick down a few like liberal, queer, white people because they're racist and they haven't practiced it yet, then I have no problem. I have no problem being that person holding the sword. I don't. I have no problem being the person. So that was Marjani Lane. I obviously it's much deeper than that. Like I said,
Yeah.
but it is a really serious thing for me, having that time, breaking on that content and making content accessible. Like it's not just like putting the fucking piece of content online. It's everyone didn't go to college. Everyone didn't go to Ivy League or go to the best high school. So sometimes some of the content that's out there is not, the language is not conducive or understandable for people who didn't have the education access. So yeah, if you're using things like freaking infinitesimal and like intersectionality and you don't explain what those words mean, it could throw someone completely off and turn them off from what that polyamory is not only for middle class white people who went to college. It's not. But right now the content reflects that. So that's what Marjani Lane's at. That's the background and where I'm at, where my headspace at when I make Marjani Lane stuff.
No, and I love it. Like I said, you distill concepts in such a way that makes it available for anyone to understand. And I appreciated that so much because just culturally coming from Jamaica, like all these big terms, we didn't learn any of this motherfucking shit about non-monogamy and polyamory and the terms in school or any of that stuff. And there are some people whose content I have found a bit too highbrow in that way. Like it's targeting a certain group of people that I'm not in. And so even like through having this space and like having access to those people, sometimes I'm like, listen, talk to me like I'm stupid. Explain this to me like you're explaining it to your child. What are you trying to say? Because some of this shit don't make no sense to me. All the words you use don't make no sense. Like the math is not, the synapses are not firing, shit's not clicking. And I also feel as if you're not able to distill your concepts down like the way you have, or even in a way that other people, the lay person, quote unquote, can understand it, then it's not accessible to anyone, not even people at your own level. If you can't explain to your grandmother what you do or what you're talking about, and your grandmother is like 94, very like old or whatever, you can't explain this to her in a way she understands, are you effectively communicating what your stance is, what your project is about, what you're trying to do? Which is why there's some people are always messaging like, oh, have you had this person? Why haven't you had their, oh, they're so great. I was like, because I don't understand what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be this like super. And it's funny, I've been called the poly elite before because I do express the need for communication and using words to describe what the fuck is going on. I think you use words to describe what the fuck is going on. If you can talk and you can use your language to describe what the fuck is going on, why the fuck not? Like, why not? But I think that some of the content that exists is obviously very white centered, very white ally centered. Let me restate that, very ally centered. And then, so it's, oh yeah, I care about the brown people, so let me put a little link. Okay, I did it. So I care about brown people. And then it goes into this like the language. Like I'm still really disgusted with how fluid bonding got turned into transphobia. Like I'm still trying to figure out how that stretch was made of transphobia or to.
Wait, what?
Yes, I've had people tell me that where fluid bonding is transphobic. I've had people tell me that fluid bonding is somehow, some way it means that people who've been sexually assaulted, that they bonded with their assaulter. And I'm like, you guys are really jumping through hoops for this right now. Because I just feel like fluid bonding and fluid exchange arguably are the same and not the same. And I feel like because there was nobody black at the table when this word was discussed, when people started changing their mind about it, that's how it left. Fluid bonding can be very deep for people in the black community and the African diaspora because of things that someone's doing with spirituality. That's why I made a huge post about that, because there is no discussion. I don't want black people to feel they can't use fluid bonding because God forbid someone tell them they're transphobic. That has nothing. I don't even think that has anything to do with it. I don't even know how that structure was made, but it was made. But that's because there was no one black at the table. There was no one black at the table who is, and there's nothing against anyone who is Christian or but there's no one black at the table who was like decolonizing themselves and was able to say, hey, like, I see why you guys feel that way, but this word made me different to someone else. Like someone who's a polyamorous person, black or African person who is polyamorous, who is navigating spirituality, African spirituality or their culture spirituality, fluid bonding would be the perfect word to describe what they're doing in a relationship. While fluid exchange might be better for something else. And the fact that word was ripped to pieces by the white community to me is absolutely hysterical. Like they just took it apart, and I'm like, this is because no one black has been present. There's been so many different things I've noticed that even the day I was in this relationship, and someone was like, no, this is a one night stand. I'm like, okay, I know a lot of black people who have NSA relationships, no strings attached relationships, and they're not one night stands. And I had to explain to this person that, hey, this is your white rendition of this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's how you see it. But this is a black page. It doesn't mean that non-black people can't come, but just understand at the end of the day why I made this page. It wasn't for you. It was for black people because you guys don't make pages for us. No one made anything for us. No one does. We're not on any content. We're not in any videos. We're not there. So we're token, shucking and jiving, doing little fucking dance with people. Like, no one cares about the black content creators, the black influencers. That's what it's a non-monogamy. They don't. I'm not gonna fucking put it up. They don't fucking care. They don't fucking care. And when they do care, it's just like a little, oh, I put some paprika on my steak today. That type of shit.
Ooh, spicy.
Like a little spice in your life. And so that's why I'm Marjani Lane. And I'm gonna keep doing that. I think that there's so much more for me to impact with how whiteness has affected our access to non-monogamy. Like it just
yeah.
You're very right. I actually had a conversation with someone today who's from Ghana. And, talking about, he was like, oh yeah, my dad had like 7 wives. My uncle had like 8 wives. Like, this is like standard. And he talks about like, yeah, like the Maasai tribe, I noticed this. And he's like, yeah, this shit has been going on. This is my whole life. Everyone that I can track in my family tree has done this kind of non-monogamous relating. And this is what that looks like. And he was like, yeah, and you live at home until you're married, even as a man. Because when you turn 18, your father starts talking to you about how to manage a household with multiple wives and how that happens. And when you bring women home back to the house, they will let you know, this one might not be the right one for you. Or they will let the woman know, my son is not right for you at this point in time, but like circle back in a little bit of time. You know what I'm saying? And so it was very interesting hearing this perspective of someone who is from Ghana, born and raised, came to the US as like an adult, getting used to this kind of environment that we have around non-monogamy and polyamory, and hearing his experiences and those of like his family members and the things that they had talked about growing up and like the history and the culture. And I was like, fuck, what the shit am I doing over here then?
I'm in the wrong place. Yeah, no, I had here my partner. He's from the Ivory Coast, and like some of this, he's like, yeah, I know about like polyamory, like more specifically polygamy. And so I know, so something he only knows about polygyny. He said, no, like there's women that have husbands like where I'm from. It's not a lot. It's not as many, of course, but it's like it happens. And I'm like, interesting. I knew, but it's interesting hearing someone like say, yeah, like I fucking know someone like aunt has 2 husbands. Like, oh my god, like, what the? And it not being like this. I'm sure there's some hysterics around it in some places. I'm not gonna deny that, but like it not being like this hysterical thing, or having these homes where there's like compounds or people are living together, or they live in different own homes. Like this idea that everyone has to live in the same fucking little 2-door apartment, two-room apartment with 6 people. That's dead. That's dead. No, like it's not. That's not what's going on. Like, and having these wives having standards. Like these wives setting up standards. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be a multiple wife. I'm gonna be your 3rd wife. Then you gotta pay this A, B, C, and D, do this A, B, C, and D. Yeah, there's a lot of decolonization that has to come out of non-monogamy. And I think that's a lot of reason why I get sick when I see so many white influencers make money off of the pain and the exploitation of Black and brown people who were already doing it before they were. Not saying that the Vikings did not have multiple wives, saying that all, but I'm not talking to them today. Because the Vikings were not the ones that were influencing general American and European culture. Let's be fucking honest here. Okay,
I mean,
so
don't tell the crackers that, because they'd be surprised.
No. You always represent this one group of people who were like being wiped out by the English every 2 weeks. Like every time when they were coming race, I'm like, yeah, kill them all. Like they were killing these people for nothing. Like their land was like they hated Dales. I don't know what it was. So with that said, I realized there's so much to undo and unpack. And even now, I'm really on that journey of looking at how it happened, like how did that affect Black people's access to non-monogamy, and why I have such a big issue sometimes with non-monogamy being forefronted by white bodies. I have a big issue with it. Sorry, I just have a big issue with it. I mean, I live in Hawaii, and one of my friends is Hawaiian told me that in Hawaii is an island called Fort Island. I used to work there. When back in the day, before the white people came and ruined everything, when there was a couples that could not procreate, they were having a hard time having children, they would send them all to the island. And then they would come back, like a day or two later. And usually, like a few weeks later, the woman would be pregnant. And so I was like, what the fuck was on the island? She said they just would literally have group sex.
Listen, they must breed somehow.
They
So they must have a baby somehow.
They were swapping spouses. Essentially, it's because it was whoever was infertile, somehow, somewhere we're going to figure it out. But we're not, it doesn't matter. Someone needs to have children. Or we talking about like the men, it's just so much. Even just how queerness was just fucking wiped the fuck out by European influence. So yeah, I have a big issue with it. Sure do, and I'm gonna talk about it. I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable. Sure make you comfortable. Where non-monogamy for you, it may be how you feel, but like you gotta talk about the fact that Black bodies and brown bodies were literally beaten and killed for doing it. Like we have African people who were told to give up their wives when the ministries came and missionaries came, and when they gave up their wives, where did their wives and kids go? That's your first. People talking about breaking up the Black family with feminism. Nah, brother, man, you're a little too late on that one, buddy. It goes back further than that. What were these women supposed to do, especially when these jobs were focused? A lot of that, even the focus of work, became very gendered. Like it's just so much to unpack with it, and that's why I want Marjani Lane to exist the way it does, to give Black people understanding. Like this is not a new story for us. It's not our first time. It's not our first rodeo, guys. We belong here.
Yes, of course. Listen, thank you so much for being vulnerable, open, sharing all this amazing stuff. It's like, oh, super exciting. Thanks for having me. So why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet? And maybe I'll bring you back again another time. We can talk about more stuff as you continue your decolonization process, and so will I.
Yep. So you guys can follow me on Instagram. That is my primary platform. I also have a TikTok. Pretty much everything you see on my Instagram's reels is going to be on my TikTok. I have a Facebook page. Everything's under the same name, Marjani Lane, without a space more than likely because it's a username. So TikTok, Facebook page, Instagram. I have a Patreon I'm working on right now. I've been had it for a while, but I'm actually going to start putting more time and energy into it, guys. I would probably say my focal point, my website is marjanilane.com. So everything's the same. It's the same everywhere. So hopefully it should be easier for everyone to find.
Yes, yes. And of course, I'll put all the links to where to find Marjani Lane in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for being here, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Once again, I'd love to thank Marjani for agreeing to appear on the podcast to talk about these deeply personal, vulnerable topics. The detailed show notes are available at monogamishpod.com, include the links to where you can find Marjani. And of course, some highlights and tidbits from the episode, including definitions for some of the terms that we discussed. So now that I've told you all of those things, let's talk about how you can find Monogamish Pod out there in the internetverse. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Monogamish Pod. Yeah, I know Facebook isn't exactly at Monogamish Pod, but if you are on Facebook and you're making a status and you type the @ button and you type, it comes up. We tag people the same way across everything now. Wild, isn't that? You can also find us on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel where we post the videos from the episodes. That's going to be youtube.com, and just search in your search bar, Monogamish Pod, and you shall find us. No, I don't have a customized URL yet. Apparently you have to be super famous to get one of those. Wild. Also, you can listen to Monogamish Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Podbay, Podchaser, Spotify, Anchor, of course, which is where we are hosted. And you can write reviews for the podcast on Podchaser and Apple Podcasts, and rate us on all three, the Apple Podcast, Podchaser, and Spotify. You can tell your friends about Monogamish Pod and share the episodes. That's super great. And you can also support the pod financially if you so desire. You can subscribe to the Patreon, where you get bonus episodes, photos, bloopers, special blog posts that I write that are a little bit intimate. access to the close friends list, access to the Discord server. There's a lot of things you get by being a patron. So sign up today, patreon.com/monogamishpod. It is an 18+ platform, so you have to type it in that way because you can't just search it. Sucks, right? You can head on over to the merch shop, monogamishpod.threadless.com, or clicking the shop button on the monogamishpod.com site, where you can get mugs, tote bags, shirts, books, masks, a lot of great things. Cups too. Did I say mugs? I did say mugs. Whoops. Stickers, magnets, all that on the merch shop. You can do that. You can also support the pod financially using Anchor support. So if you listen to us on Anchor, just press the support button. You can subscribe for as low as 99 cents a month. You can just support for like less than $1. Wild. Every mickle muckle. The other thing going on in the world, of course, is that we have a Monogamish Pod newsletter, which will be coming out monthly. The first edition dropped on April 30th, so if you have not read it yet, you should absolutely do that. Head on over to monogamishpod.substack.com to subscribe today. Links to all these, of course, in the detailed show notes on the website. You can also find me personally out there on the internet on just Girls Gone Wild kind of shit, talking about things. Not actually Girls Gone Wild, but you know what I mean. Head on over to Twitter or Instagram at HaveYouMetJhen. And you can find me there posting things about books that I've read or just sharing thinky thoughts, because that's apparently something I do now. And all the time, but also now. So that's all that I really have for you today. I don't want to detract too much from the episode. And also this episode was kind of a long one. I've told you all the basics. Just head on over to monogamishpod.com and you can check the detailed show notes for this episode, and it will have everything you may have missed. Once again, I'm Jen, and this has been Monogamish Pod. Have a great night, y'all.